Hello and welcome to the Start Inward podcast. New episodes are brought to inspire you to take action, challenge your mindset, and encourage you to love yourself. I'm your host, Hannah, and I'm so glad you're here. Today, we're going to be diving in and talking about the journey to finding your purpose. As young adults, there is this pressure and expectation to have it all figured out. And if you are at a stage in your life right now where you're stressed out, you're confused, you don't know exactly what it is that you want to do with your life, or you're back and forth between different passions, this video is for you. Today, I have with me a very special and amazing guest. Her name is Dr. Juliette Nelson. And Dr. Juliette, can you please share a little bit more about yourself and what you do?
Hello, everybody. Yes, I am Dr. Nelson. I am an industrial and organizational psychologist during the day, with a focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then in the evening time, I am an entrepreneur. I have 4 companies, Nuri Lens, Junuri Publishing, and Voisin. Nuri Lens is a wooden eyewear company. Junuri is a learning and development company for students, professionals, and organizations. And you have Junuri Publishing that offers book coaching and publishing services. Voisin is a Haitian Creole language learning management system, where we really provide language learning solutions to Haitian Creole language learners and speakers. And outside of that, I'm just a learner on my life's journey. Love to watch Korean dramas. And fun fact, I do like to go on drives like that have no defined destination. So if I'm rushing to work, that doesn't count. So it has to be like it's a day off and I'm just driving.
Okay. I love that. And just also a little quick fact about myself. When I graduated from high school, I was actually looking into careers that I wanted to pursue. And industrial organizational psychology was actually the very first thing, because I took this test, you know how it like matches with your personality, and that was the first thing that popped up. So then that actually led me into pursuing my bachelor's in public administration. But life has other plans, so maybe in the future I may find myself.
It's a growing field, I'll tell you that much.
It is. Dr. Nelson, thank you so much for introducing yourself. Absolutely. So without further ado, let's get into the podcast. Sure. So the first question that I want to ask you today is, since we're talking about purpose, how do you define purpose and why is it important for individuals to find it?
How do I define purpose? It's kind of like an objective in a sense. An objective, that you achieve. It doesn't have one specific, it's not static. It doesn't look like one specific way, right? And you're able to do it in different spaces, in different seasons, in different roles. So that's how I would define purpose. Why is it important? I think it gives your life more meaning, right? The law of humanistic psychology, the founding fathers of humanistic psychology, they came up with that because research prior to that was just looking at human beings as just these organisms, right? That we can conduct these experiments on. And then they're like, no, human beings are capable of living out their lives with meaning and purpose, and we need to look at what that looks like. So it really, living out your life with that purpose allows it to give it more meaning, and almost more substance in a sense. So that's what I would say. So in the beginning of your introduction, you shared that you have 4 different businesses. Yes. And you're also working a full-time job during the day. Yes. So I'm very curious, what has your journey looked like in finding your purpose? And if you can remember, when was the moment that everything like clicked for you? Because in order to work a full-time job and do those 4 businesses at night, you have to have like the passion for it and the motivation. So I'm so curious. So I'm gonna be very honest. Okay. Very honest. It is not easy. And sometimes it's trash, if I'm being honest. Now, in terms of, and I say this from a perspective of balancing everything, because and as I say, usually the dream is free, the hustle is sold separately and it's very expensive, right? I think we often look at the glamour of what entrepreneurship or having a job. Well, everybody needs a job, but having this big position or this
Right.
role or whatever it is, we just look at the glamour of what we perceive it to have, but we don't always consider a lot of the work and the time and the energy that's invested. So I do say that. Now, in terms, I don't think anything ever clicked in a sense. Things are still clicking little by little.
Okay.
You do make discoveries along the way, and I try to allow myself to be content in every season and explore what I'm learning in every season. But I will say when I went to South Korea, I think that's where the seeds were planted. I was an English teacher in South Korea almost 10 years ago, if not 10 years. And that's where, at that time I had just graduated from college. I was supposed to do my year in Korea, come back and go to law school to be the family lawyer. Bless my parents' heart. I told them I wasn't going to be the family lawyer. They were devastated. And I said, I'm just going to try to see what this business degree gives me. But while I was in Korea, I didn't realize it was really seeds that were being planted, right? I was cultivating my skills as an educator, as a lifelong learner. I also was given the name Nanuri, the Korean name, which is a derivative of the Korean verb nanuda. And my pastor gave it to me with the commission to share my gift wherever I go. And so I've taken that with me, and you notice Nuri Lens, Ju Nuri, those all have my Korean name in them. And that's how I kind of carry that calling. So that's where my small understanding of, okay, there's some purpose to me began. I'm grateful because there have been also people who, even in certain tasks and stuff where I was a bit disgruntled and I'm like, I don't want to do this. No, I'm tired of it. I've had those people who with grace have reminded me, maybe this is just part of your calling. This is part of your life journey. And so I'm blessed and I'm grateful for that. So yeah, I would say that's kind of where it started. Now, in terms of things clicking, things just happen along the way. And I adjust. That's it. I do, a lot of my ideas happen in my sleep. And so a lot of my crazy ideas, sometimes they happen in my sleep or, for some of it, like in the shower.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I have to tell someone, so I'll call my dad, or my mom. My mom is usually like, girl, take a break. My father is kind of like, okay, these ideas are a bit much, but one of them is gonna land.
Yes. That's funny because that's
So,
exactly how my parents are too.
right. And I'm grateful for that, right? Because we all need that. We all need someone who believes
Yeah.
that something's gonna land, even
Yeah.
if they don't understand it.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, I think that's where it is. And I guess whichever things are more tangible, I have a lot of ideas, so I kind of write them out or put them on notepads and stickies and all that. But whichever thing I find is most tangible, where I guess the thing that clicks is like you find this new discovery that is like, oh, okay, this is how I could go about getting this done. So for example, my eyewear company, um, I didn't really know I was gonna be an eyewear designer, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But I think one of the discoveries was purchasing a pair of glasses for a gamer, eyeglasses, and I learned that they were blue light blocking glasses to
Wow.
protect their eyes from
Yeah.
screen. And when I formed Junuri, which is completely different from Nuri Lens, I was like, wait, I'm serving students and professionals. So maybe blue light blocking glasses could be helpful because we have to take in a lot of screen time too. And that's kind of the discovery that led to other discoveries that led to Nuri Lens. So I think for me, it wasn't something that clicked. It's just like these small discoveries that
That
make
happened along the
some
way.
of right. So exactly. And they make some of my crazy ideas feel more tangible.
No, I love that you said that because there is this misconception that like people kind of know what they want immediately and then they go after that and then it's like they, explode like when it comes to social media. like, for example, let's say a fitness influencer, they
Mhm.
know that they love fitness and they
Mhm.
start making these like videos and then they blow up. But it's like in our minds, from the viewer's point, it's like, okay, they knew that this is what they wanted. But the truth is, that's not how it starts. Like,
Yeah.
you just start doing things, and along the way,
Right.
everything starts to click. So I love how
Right.
you said that.
Right. And some
So,
people do know what they want. I will say that, and in some aspects of our life, we
mhm,
might know what we want. But again, that along the way thing is key because there's something you had to learn along the way for you to be able to know what you want, right? Look at relationships.
exactly.
The more I hate to say it this way, but the more experiences you have, whether it's in friendships, whether
Yeah.
it's in work, professional relationships, or just romantic relationships, that helps define how you want to interact with people
Yeah.
going forward, right? And
Mhm,
that's what helps you work toward the I know what I want. But
mhm,
besides that, we're all trying to figure it out. I'm pretty sure all the greats, Elon Musk, well, now they are the greats, Mark Zuckerberg. I remember when Facebook, the first years of Facebook, when there was like a high five and a MySpace, you know,
mhm.
they were just figuring it out. Okay, let's put this thing together and see
Like,
what it
he didn't
does.
know that it was going to
Right.
explode into how it
Right.
became.
You only hope that it does, but you keep trying different things. And I think that's where you see people having just all these different platforms, right? They have they have 3 podcasts, and they have this endeavor and that endeavor and whatever, because you just kind of have to try and figure it out before you see
Exactly.
which one sticks.
So,
Absolutely.
based on that little, like that answer that you gave, and based on what we were talking about, there is this misconception that young adults are supposed to know what they want. They're supposed to know what they want to study in college. If they decide to go, they're supposed to know what kind of company and job they want to land and who they want to work for. And then on top of that, like I mentioned briefly, there's this pressure that social media has imposed on us because on social media, it seems like everyone has their life together and figured out. So, what advice would you give to someone in their 20s who is struggling with figuring out what their purpose is and what exactly it is that they want to do with their lives?
And that is an amazing question. And this is a conversation I often have. As kids, we're asked what we want to be when we grow up.
Right.
We're not asked what we want to do. And
Mm,
I understand that feeling of having to plan, make permanent decisions for a future that is so uncertain,
mm-hmm,
right? And I
mm-hmm,
think some of those permanent decisions, in a sense, are
mm-hmm.
the majors we have to select in school, right?
Yeah.
Or what we want to be. And I think it would be beneficial, thinking from a perspective point of view, to
Mm-hmm,
shift that thinking. Think about what you want to do. If you're going into college, what field would help you to achieve some of the things you want to do?
right.
So if you want to help people lead healthier lives, you can do it as a nurse, but you can do it as a consultant. You can do it as a fitness instructor. And that's where the purpose comes in, right? You
Mm-hmm,
can do it volunteering at your church, right? If you have a cooking class and you say, okay, I want to teach people healthier meals, it doesn't have to look like a certain thing, right? It
right.
doesn't. And so when you're able to look at, again, the purpose, right? What is that objective? What is that thing that I'm trying to achieve? And what is the full range of what it can look like? Now you can be flexible, right?
Mm-hmm,
Because if, for example, you wanted to educate people, it may not happen as a teacher, but you might start an after school program, or you might end up being working in training and development in a company, right? It's not
mm-hmm.
always going to look the same way. So that's what I would encourage. Shift your thinking, not from what do I want, what is the title that I want to
Right. But what I
fulfill,
want to do.
but what do I want to do? And from there, you want to be okay with the impact of what you do. Because the
Yeah.
reality is, a lot of people on social media, they can have a strong following and they say what people want to hear. That doesn't mean
Right.
that they're necessarily having as big of an impact, right? Um,
Exactly.
and so, yes, there's a lot of pressure. But again, social media, and what I realize is that what we see on social media is often our perception. Some
Yeah.
people, they do flaunt, right? Or they do present a life of luxury, a life of perfection. And all of us in some way try to present the best parts of ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
But oftentimes there's perception. And all of a sudden, someone becomes more than they even portrayed because we perceived it some way. And then one person told another. And all of a sudden, it's like, well, you put yourself out to be someone you're not. No, we perceived it that way.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think that's important for social media. Even I went to South Korea 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And while I was in South Korea, I would put pictures of, the places I went and so on and so forth. When I came back to the States, I ended up working in a previous position where I traveled a lot. And so I didn't necessarily say, like take pictures of where I was
Right.
like traveling. But
Mm-hmm.
if I was at the airport, you'd see a photo of my bag, or I'll do like the location check-in. I'm at
Yeah.
such and such airport.
Mm-hmm.
Until today, people still say, "Oh, when are you going back? Going back where? Aren't you a teacher in South Korea?" This is 10 years ago that I
Mm-hmm.
was, but do you see how people now, it's a perception, right?
Yeah.
See the airport and they're still assuming that maybe I'm traveling back and forth
Back and
between the
forth.
States and South Korea. And so I would encourage listeners to kind of be okay with where you are. Because more than likely, the person that you're looking at on social media, they are probably in their mother's basement and they have their computer or their one iPhone, and they might be unemployed or they might not be. But we're all in this together. We're all on the
Yeah.
human journey together, Some people, they rent Airbnbs for it to look like
Mm-hmm.
they're living in a big mansion or a big house. And for us, because we see the big mansion or big house, we assume that they're living on all this money, right? Some people, I mean, we live in the United States. A lot of us function on credit. So some people are not as rich as we think them to be. They're just functioning on other people's money, on a bank's money. So I would say just be okay with your journey. Yes, celebrate those that you see on social media, but understand that you're only seeing them in that point in time. You
Mm-hmm.
don't know what happens behind closed
Closed
doors.
doors. How can someone start the process of identifying and discovering their own purpose in life? So, one, you said asking yourself, what do you want to do? Instead of like, who do I want to be? Because remember,
Right.
the title, like you said, it doesn't equate to. I can give you actually a perfect example of this. So, for me personally, when I was 15, I started public speaking in my high school. I started clubs because I loved helping people understand how to create a better life for themselves. So I would
Right.
talk about goal setting, time management,
Right.
etc. Fast forward to today, I work at a rape crisis center, but I'm doing what I love because I'm educating people. It may
Yeah,
not be exactly what I was doing when I was 15, but
that's
I'm
right.
educating people on violence prevention. So whether
Right.
that's talking about like healthy relationships, sexual assault, etc. I took, and I'm so glad you said that because it kind of just clicked. I was like, oh my gosh, I think I
Right.
did do that. I
Mhm.
did take what I want to do in public speaking, and now I'm working somewhere where I'm doing my passion.
Right.
So, besides asking yourself, what do I want to do? How can someone start the process of, like I mentioned, identifying and discovering their own purpose in life?
I mean, there's different ways to go about it.
Mhm.
Um, I would say in every experience, think about what you learned from it.
Okay.
No matter how good or bad the experience, what did you learn from it? And how does that shape who you want to be, right? And maybe I need to
Mm.
correct myself.
No,
They
I
say,
love how
what do
you
you
said
want to be
that.
when you grow up, right? Not who do you
Yeah.
want to be? And who could be a person that walks in whatever the purpose is. So no
Mm-hmm.
matter how good or bad an experience, what do you learn from that?
Mm-hmm.
And based on what you learn, how do you move forward? And that may start slowly putting the pieces together
Mm-hmm.
of how to walk in your purpose. And when you're able to do that, I think it brings more meaning to stuff, right?
Right.
For some people, they're able to write out their purpose, right?
Mm-hmm.
People visit my website, they'll notice that I will write out a purpose statement.
Yes.
For you, it
I
doesn't always
saw
have to
that,
look
by the way. Your website's
right.
great.
Right. Oh, thank you. I did it myself. Um,
Oh, okay. On top
um,
of the 4 other jobs and the full-time job, she's also a
yeah.
website creator.
I am not a website creator. I create my websites. Okay. I said that because I do have website creators in my life. And so I always tell them so that they could be proud of me just a tiny,
Yeah.
bit.
Mhm.
But anyway, some people do have purpose statements, but you
Mhm.
don't always need a purpose statement. You
Right.
don't. You just know, like, this is your objective, right? How do you help people? I remember working with a student, and usually I ask my students this: what do you want to do when you grow up? Because there's much more that you're going to get from what do you want to do from than what do you want to be.
Yeah.
And one of the kids, bless his heart, he said, I want to play video games. I said, for the rest of your life? He said, yep. And really, he was like, Miss Juliette, you on a time crunch right now? Because I told my friend that I'm coming back to finish this Fortnite game and I need to get back to the next level. So we need to hurry this up. And I'm saying, like, boy, you on my time, right?
Right. Right.
But he's on a time crunch. But he was like, no, I want to play video games. And I said, what do you think about creating games for other kids to play? And he was like, oh, I would like that. But again, he can still bask in the joy of being a gamer, right?
Yes.
It's not always going to look like him running from his tutoring session to go play Fortnite. It can be something completely different. And that's where it's like figuring out what you're learning from every experience and seeing how you can move forward, because eventually you may find patterns, right?
Mhm.
Who we are at our core, it doesn't change necessarily. How we show up, what the seasons are, those might change, but who we are, it doesn't change. It can evolve, right? It can evolve. And so people might think, oh, well, you changed. We evolve. And so when you're able to learn from these different experiences, now you're like, okay, how can I move forward? Yes, when you were in high school, at that point, you're like, I want to inspire kids and teach them public speaking and so on and so forth. But in this season, public speaking doesn't look like what you were doing in high school, because you're not in high school.
Right.
You're not in high school. You had to learn from that experience and say, okay, how can I move forward? And whatever it was that led you into working in that rape crisis center, now you're like, okay, I can take that skill that I had in high school and I can apply that here by teaching and educating and empowering. Again, it doesn't look exactly like it looked like in high school, but I'm still making an impact. And you're doing the same thing on your podcast. So again, as you grow, as you evolve, as you go along, you're going to see that the seasons are going to look differently, but you'll find that you're slowly like, okay, I'm still coming to do this and I'm still fulfilling this mission in a sense in this way. And it can be as a friend, it can be as a spouse, a partner, an employee, a leader. It can be as anything. Some people, they want to protect the environment, right? You want to protect the environment, you can you can do it as a scientist, you can do it as the garbage man, or garbage woman. Or you can do it by recycling in your home. It doesn't always look the same way. So you're always wanting to tap into, what am I learning and how can I move forward from here?
I love how you word things, because what I'm recognizing is that first, in order to find your purpose, it's all about perspective. It's all about how you're taking the experiences that you have, but then asking yourself those self-introspective questions like, okay, what did I learn from this? Okay, I
Thank you.
hated this experience, but what did that teach me about what I want moving forward?
Mhm.
Okay, I
Mhm.
love this experience. Now, what can I take from loving this and how can I
Mhm.
transform it into doing something with
Right.
this?
Right.
So I love how you said that. And you actually answered my next question. So I'm going to move on to
Oh.
the next one. Yeah, you see, you're already on it. It's like we're in sync. So
Oh.
honestly, I think you might have answered the next two questions, but if you have anything to add, please do. So the next question that I wanted to
Mhm.
ask, or the next two questions, was
Mhm.
the setting goals and creating a vision or mission statement play a role in finding your purpose?
It can.
Okay.
I'm very goal oriented.
Hmm.
So I'm very big on like where am I trying to go? But Emmanuel Acho, he doesn't believe in setting goals
Hmm.
because he feels like they're limiting. So it's like, I've set this goal, yes, and I'm not going to necessarily push myself to go beyond. Now, for
Hmm.
me, I set the goals because I'm like, okay, I need to know that I'm doing something. So for me, it's like I need to set milestones so I know I'm reaching the baby steps. And
Hmm.
then I achieve the goals, but my goal is like, now that I've done this, what's next? That works for me. But
Hmm.
again, for Emmanuel Acho, he's saying, listen, if you set a goal now, you limit yourself. So you kind of want to go beyond that. And both are very valid. Both are very, very valid. All to say, you may not. I think what's beneficial is really doing a self-evaluation and understanding
Right.
how you best function, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
What do you need to be your best self? And for some of us, it is setting goals,
Hmm.
right? For others of us, it might look a little bit different,
Yeah.
right? So I think it's really looking inward and saying, okay, what are some of those things that I need? I know they have like personality tests and so on and so forth. And I've found benefit in them, especially Myers-Briggs.
Yeah.
Because I don't, and I think sometimes we allow those things to box us in. I don't. It's really helped me to learn about myself a little bit, right? So I've learned about my introversion, and it doesn't mean that I can't function in public, but it does mean I just need a little bit of time to recharge,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
In the same sense, I am a judger. I'm an INFJ. I'm a judger, and those are the people who need more order. And so I understand that when it comes to stepping into a new workspace, when it comes to taking on a new endeavor, I need charts, I need lists, I need
Hmm.
all of that stuff. And that's what works for me. So when you understand what works for you, you're now able to leverage the appropriate tools so that you can set yourself up for success, whatever success looks like for you. Success does not need to always look like a lot of money. Success doesn't always need to look like you owning your own business, because it's exhausting. I'm telling y'all, I'm going through it. But, success can be you being an advocate at your school. Success can be you learning to repair relationships, broken relationships with family members or friends. That can
Hmm.
also be equivalent to success. So really tap into the things that you need as an individual and see how you can leverage those to move to where you need to go.
You said you're an INFJ. I'm an ENFJ. So,
Oh,
see?
okay.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And the
That
reason
is
why I asked,
interesting.
yeah, very interesting.
So
And the
you like
reason
peopling.
I do,
Bless your heart.
I do.
Oh my gosh. I have I think like one or two ENFJs in my life, and
Oh.
there's a lot to learn. I think and that's what I appreciate.
Hmm.
There's a lot to learn from them because they're the ones who will walk into a room and start a conversation.
Yeah.
And for me, my friends know this. Like, I could be standing on a pot of gold and standing
Hmm.
next to the person who can give me access to the pot of gold. And don't judge me, y'all. This is just me.
Hmm.
All I have to do is start a conversation. Just so I can get access to the pot of gold, we gonna sit inside. We will stand
Sit
and
in
sit in
silence.
silence. In silence.
Okay, but I will say though, there are times where I am like very extroverted, but there are times where when it comes to that pot of gold, I will not feel like talking either.
And that's
So
okay.
Like it depends. It honestly depends. So I will say there are times where I'm extroverted, but there are also times where I'm very introverted. And I
Right.
guess it depends on the situation.
And it speaks to the fact that we're dynamic beings, right?
Yes.
You're not,
We don't fit
you
into this one box or
not
this
one
one
box.
category.
There can be times when, yes, you really get an introversion versus extroversion. I think people don't understand. It's how you recharge. It's what you need to recharge.
Yes.
There are people who are shy and they are very extroverted.
Oh
For
yeah.
them to be able to accomplish the things they need to accomplish, whatever, however big or small,
Yeah.
they appreciate the presence of family and friends. Think
Yes.
of like on your worst day, right?
Hmm.
Crisis, whatever it is, or even during the pandemic, right?
Hmm.
People were stuck in their houses. Some people probably loved it,
Hmm.
absolutely loved it. I know, like when they told me we were working from home, I was like, oh no, but it was a party over here. It was a party. I'm like, oh my gosh, more time for me to like really. So it was helpful for
Yeah.
me to have time by myself and then come out and be like, okay, I can do all these things. For
Hmm.
extroverted people, for them, it might have been challenging, rightfully so, because it's like, wow, I really appreciate that in person presence,
Person
right?
presence.
So
Yeah.
perhaps like the Zoom, connections and Google Meet and all of that was beneficial for them,
Yeah.
because they need something that's tangible.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, it's interesting, learning the introversion and extroversion, but hey, we're kind of close.
Yeah, we are. We're just
We're kind of close.
we are kind of close. And the reason why I asked that question is because something that has helped me a lot, and maybe can help someone who's listening, is that recently I wrote down like a mission and a vision statement. So, for
Mm-hmm.
example, I wrote down what I want to do, and then I tie it back to the work that I'm doing so that I feel this
Yes.
sense of purpose. So, for example,
Yes.
my mission is to inspire people to create a mindset shift that allows them to
Mm-hmm.
see the world with more compassion and,
Yes.
more empathy. Because
Mm-hmm.
I don't, in the world today, like there's so many different views when it comes to like politics and
Mm-hmm.
religion and etc. And people are so like they believe so in what they believe in that
Mm-hmm.
they in doing so they kind of invalidate, I want to say, other people's experiences. But I think there's a duality to everything. Like,
Yeah.
I understand your point of view, but here's my point of view, and let's come to a solution together. Like, that's how I
Right.
think.
Right.
So, in doing that and having this like statement, it's like, okay, I am educating people on the importance of having really healthy relationships, on the
Right.
importance of being aware of sexual assault,
Mm-hmm.
understanding that it's happening in our society, but
Yeah.
also understanding that people have different views and
Mm-hmm.
respecting their views, but
Mm-hmm.
sharing mine, but then
Mm-hmm.
coming together and trying to make the world a better place despite of our differences.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I have a vision statement and also a mission
Mm-hmm.
statement. This way, I know that in case I get lost, in case I get,
Yes.
oh my God, the work that I'm doing, like I feel like I'm not making progress, I always go back and I read that because I say, you know what? This is why I'm here and this is what I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing. So
Mm-hmm.
that's what I do. But I love how you explained like your own process too, and how people have different when it comes to like personality traits as well, about how they recharge and how they
Right.
move forward. So
Right.
thank you for sharing that.
And I really appreciate you. It must be the NFJ in us, because
Yeah, I
really
think so.
this is what I tell people.
Mhm.
You're almost like repeating to me what I tell people, right?
Mm.
I think people have a fear
Mhm.
of, it's that fear that if I hold space for you to be who you are, or for you to share your perspective, all of
Mhm.
a sudden it means that whatever my perspective is doesn't matter.
Right.
And I think we're all guilty of it, but
Mhm.
it's this fear,
Yeah.
right? Where it's like, it's okay, it's all right, I'm Christian, somebody else can be Buddhist, it's okay.
Right. And it's
And it's okay
okay.
for me to learn from their lived experience, right?
Exactly.
I don't have to, I don't have to accept it as my truth, not even an agree or disagree.
Exactly.
I don't have to accept it as my truth, and that's okay. um but I think that's where the empathy comes in, right?
Mhm.
I know, I've been in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space for a couple of years.
Mhm.
And what I find, that is the part for me, it's that empathy part, right?
Yeah, I'm so big on that too.
Right. The reality is a lot of the inequity, a lot of the exclusion, a lot of the lack of diversity is based on the notion that a certain group of people are less human and less worthy of humanity and less worthy of grace and compassion than you are, or than your perception of what the dominant group is. And so, like, when I was a kid, right, I know I grew up in middle school, especially. It was a bit diverse, right? I was in honors classes, and so you didn't see that the white kid was getting higher grades or the boys were getting high. Like, we were just all created equal. We're all in this together. And so even when it came to making sure our homework was done, we were, and I'm sorry to my teachers, but we were at lunch, like, how do we do this problem? Because we're all trying to win, right? And even and with kids, it's the same way. You always hear those stories about sharing lunch, right? Where if one kid doesn't have lunch, we'll give them grapes, we'll give them chips, everyone's going to share, because we're looking at each other as human beings, right? The fact that this person in my friend circle doesn't have what I have, I want to make sure they have. And I don't feel like it's taking anything away from me for me to cut my sandwich in half and give them half of mine, right? I don't feel like it's taking anything away from me if there's the last slice of pizza, right? And I know they don't come to school with lunch all the time, for me to say, hey, you have it, right? But I think as we become older, we now get put into these boxes and pedestals of superiority and inferiority, where it's like, I'm more deserving of this thing than this person,
and this person, or this community.
Right. We see people just as they're presented to us, but we don't consider what they're going back to.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's like, oh, well, I worked hard to make this amount of money. That homeless person, they made bad decisions, or did they? And if they did make bad decisions, did they have the environment that you had to make sure that you didn't make the same bad decisions? You see what I mean? And so when we're able to look at each other as human beings, it's going to be challenging for me to see someone suffer, for me to be like, wow, it's okay for them to have the last slice of pizza. It's okay for this program to be created for them that gives them an opportunity to reach where I am. It's not going to take anything away from me. It's just going to help make us all better. And so I just all to say, I really appreciated your statement.
Well, thank you for saying what you do. We can have like another episode on this, because when it comes to DEI too, I'm also creating a DEI onboarding draft video. Okay, this is like way off the podcast.
Very nice.
We can talk about this later. Yeah, in my organization, because I recognize that the people
that's the work of an IO psychologist, by the way.
Really?
Yes, we it's basically where we do a lot of things that support organizational effectiveness.
Because I'm recognizing that the community that my organization serves are people of color. However, if the people who are working in those jobs don't represent those communities, then how can those communities feel comfortable or feel, like I can relate, you can relate to me, I want to come and share my story. Okay, but that's besides the point. Anyways, we'll talk IO talk later. But okay, so you mentioned that once again, you're working a full-time job and you also have 4 other businesses. So how can you explain how your purpose has evolved over time?
It just
happened, or
I don't want to say and it could be evolved. And I guess today I don't know if I can say evolved. Tomorrow I might say it, but I don't know I could say evolved today. And I think it's shifted in a sense, or it just looked different. I consider it seasons.
Okay.
I go through different seasons. And my purpose looks different in different seasons. That's it. So again, I mentioned South Korea. That planted a lot of seeds. And so, for example, me finding out that I can buy glasses for $30, and this is 10 years ago, y'all, so it might be more expensive. I don't know. I can't relate to the expensive experience if that's what it is now. But I started a good collection of eyewear. And that's what planted the seeds for what we now know as NuriLens. So it was just a different season. I remember praying and saying, God, I want you to use me to reach people from different backgrounds and different cultures and so on and so forth, because again, I'm halfway across the world and I've learned so much about this culture, and this culture has given so much to me. And I've been able to make great connections. So that was, something that I hoped for. And here I am working, impacting diversity, equity, and inclusion. Okay. Even as a teacher, I had students who were like, oh, teacher Juliette, you should be a classroom teacher. And I'm like, absolutely not. I'm not. And bless your heart.
Yeah, people tell me that. Like when I go into high schools, they're like, you were born for this. And I'm like,
Yeah. And I'm like, I don't want to have to teach kids that I can't discipline, in a sense. You know what I mean? Like, I can't be like, you can't speak to the child. You can't. I said, I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
But what happened is I ended up becoming a private tutor. And I worked with students, but it looked so different. I was able to look at their different learning needs and craft a personalized learning, like an individualized learning experience for them. And so, identifying their opportunity areas and working on those opportunity areas with them. No, it did not look like me being in a classroom, right? And coming up with a curriculum. Shout out to teachers. But it still looked different, I've done training and development. I've done coaching. Teaching looks different. I'm a children's choir director and I teach kids music. And in that experience, they learn leadership, they learn friendship, they learn collaboration, they learn teamwork. And so again, it didn't look like being in the classroom as it looked like 10 years ago, but it's a different season, and I'm able to still fulfill my purpose differently. So perhaps, the purpose evolved, but I would just say what it looked like just changed.
It's changed. Have you ever wavered back and forth between different passions? And if so, what helps guide your decision-making process in choosing what you decided to do?
That is a good question. Have I wavered between passions? I would say more like big decisions.
Okay.
That might have been fueled by my passions. So I there are times I will often hear the perspectives of those around me. Some people I trust. And there are times I just need a minute to process it. I'm a strong advocate for therapy. So my therapist doesn't know this, but she's my best friend. So I usually will kind of lay it out and lay out my concerns and everything that's making me nervous about it, or just therapy allows you to not be stuck, in a sense, because you can just lay it all out. So just going through this process of processing. Oftentimes I don't like to say what the decision is until it comes out of my mouth. But the goal is for me to make the decision that I feel is best for me at that moment.
Okay.
I don't like doing things because someone told me to do it.
Right.
Because I can't take responsibility for what someone told me to do. I can take responsibility for what I decided was best.
Yeah.
It can be in line with what the someone told me to do.
Yeah.
Right. But I realize that I need to also be convicted that this is the right decision to make. And people need to be okay with the fact that if I didn't go along with your decision, that doesn't mean you gave me bad advice. That just means that I didn't determine that to be the best decision for me. And so if it goes wrong, I'm able to take accountability for it. Like, man, Juliette, you messed up. But what did you learn? How do you move forward? I can take accountability. And if it goes well, it went well. So that's kind of my process in navigating making like a tough choice between passions.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's also accepting that timing is everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I mentioned like things that are tangible, right?
Yeah.
Timing is everything. So there might be one thing that's more tangible or more realistic than the other.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean that I'm not going to do the other thing,
Right.
but I'm not able to do it now.
Yeah.
So that informs the decision. Yeah.
Hmm. Okay, I like that. So it depends on what you feel is best for you. So you can listen to what other people have to say, but
Yep.
ultimately make the decision based on what you need right now and what you think will help you in the long run.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Can you speak to the role of failure and setbacks in the process of finding your purpose?
I mean, everybody perceives failure differently.
Mm-hmm.
The way I describe it is failure is not when you fall, it's when you choose not to get back up.
Mm-hmm.
But other people do speak to the fact that failure is important.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the end all be all.
Mm-hmm.
It's just there's this one thing that didn't work out, and that's okay.
Right.
So I guess it could be semantics for a lot of us.
Mm-hmm.
But the important thing is for you to learn from it.
Right.
You know? And some things don't always have to be, again, it's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Some people view failure as like really the end all be all. And
Yeah.
so if you view it that way, I would describe it as this is when you choose not to get back up, right?
Mm-hmm.
But failure can also be this thing didn't work out, or the end of this season is here. I'll be very transparent with one of my companies, my eyewear company. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of time. It costs me a lot of my sleep, right?
Mm-hmm.
It takes a lot of my creative capacity. And there are moments where I'm like, I don't want to do this. But I've also come to terms with the fact that if I ever decided, hey, I'm going to shut down this business, it's just the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm okay with that. I can be brave enough to keep moving or brave enough to choose my mental health.
Right.
Right.
Exactly. Exactly.
And so I wouldn't see that as a failure.
Mm-hmm.
I just see it as a lesson learned. So again, it's very much perspective, but I think the important part again is what am I learning from this? And how does that help make me better going forward? No matter how you perceive failure, it should not be the thing that it should not be the thing that ends you.
Mm-hmm.
You can learn from it. I know we have this big cancel culture, right? And so
Yes.
someone who's gotten canceled could perceive themselves, or we could perceive that person as a failure. But
Yeah.
there's something for them to learn from it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Restoration is possible for all of us. It may not look the same, but we also have to give ourselves the space to learn and evolve, right? So perhaps you did use non-inclusive language, right? Or words that were inappropriate, but you kind of have to go in and say, what were those things that caused me to do that? Maybe it's my upbringing. Maybe I grew up in a space where that's the language that was used and I thought it was okay. But how do I move forward? Right? Mm-hmm. I was penalized. I lost my job. I lost that scholarship, right? Because I know people are going viral for some of the not so smart decisions they're making, right? And that's accountability, right? But that's also part of your journey. You were held accountable, so now what do you learn and how do you better yourself moving forward? And that also helps you tap into what you're purposed, who you are purposed to be, and what you're purposed to do.
Thank you, Dr. Nelson. I love how you said that.
Absolutely.
So my last question for you today is, what are some practical exercises or activities that our listeners can do today after listening to this episode to help them uncover their passions, strengths, and ultimately their purpose?
I would say just find what your creative outlet is. For some people, it's writing. For some people, it's being in nature. For some people, it's drawing. For some people, it's painting.
Mm-hmm.
and just let everything out. Let everything out. Jot everything, write everything, draw put out as much as you can. Because eventually you're going to find some patterns, right? If writing helps, start a journal. I always encourage people to journal, but again, I love to write and I love to run my mouth. So writing helps for many people, but maybe it can be drawing, right? If you feel that you struggle with expressing yourself, maybe you'll find that drawing or painting or throwing colors on a, canvas or something might be helpful, but also look for the meaning in that, right? Use that as a tool to be like, what does this mean to me? And what does this mean about how I want to step out? So that's what I would encourage. Find your creative outlet. For some people, it can be vision boards, right? Or creating collages. It can be scrapbooking, taking parts of a magazine or things or little trinkets or whatever and putting them together. Those can all contribute to really you discovering, okay, who do I want to be and how do I want to be that person? And what does that look like? And what impact do I want to be? And also think of impact as not always I think we're in this world where there's just the instant gratification, and that's tricky. That's real tricky. Because, and I said this on a previous podcast, if they say it's easy, ask more questions. Because it's gonna hurt a lot. When you jump in thinking it was easy, and then you get hit with the reality of what they meant by easy. Because it's think about when you were in high school, right? Someone asks you, how are your grades? And you say, oh, they're good. But in your head, you're like, a C is better than a C minus. So yes, it's good, right? That's all perspective. So someone can say easy, but they may not always, it might be second nature to them. Right. I use the example of become an entrepreneur in 2 easy steps. No. Entrepreneurship takes risk. That's the definition of entrepreneurship, and it's separate from business ownership. They can be one and the same at times. But to start a business, it's not 2 easy steps. Most of the time you have to wait 3 to 5 business days or 24 to 48 business hours for the state to officially file your business. Then you got to go to the IRS and find a tax ID and all of that. And there's business plans and operating agreements and documents. And there's all that stuff, right? And so be patient with yourself, show yourself grace, understand that things can take time and it's okay for them to take time. But it's important for you to also celebrate the little wins, right? You want to start a business. The fact that you came up with an idea is something to celebrate, because some folks want to start a business, but they don't know what to do.
What they want to do.
Right. That's somewhere to start. If you have one person who comes to you and says, wow, that thing you did was awesome, that is huge. And you should celebrate that. Even if it's not on social media where there's tens of thousands of followers, even if it's not that, you should celebrate even the small baby steps, because you don't know how those baby steps can set you up for something greater or something of a further reach. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Dr. Nelson, thank you so much for all your words of wisdom, words of advice. I appreciate you so much. And I really believe our listeners have gotten so much advice, so much great things from you. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen. For more content like this, please subscribe, feel free to leave a comment, rating, and review, and share with someone you know. Until next week, my friends, please stay safe, know that you're loved, and never forget your worth.